Okay, shalom, brothers. We're back again with another lesson. The name of this lesson will be entitled The Gentiles. Now, this is based upon the brother Karatazar down there in Florida, which I saw a video of him, and he was battling and dealing with these Edomite demons that thought they knew the scriptures. And the way they were reading the scriptures, every time they saw the word Gentile, they just knew that the one that the world calls Jesus Christ came and died for everybody based upon that word Gentile. So, I thought about it and I said, well, we're going to do a lesson, me and Elder Ramlab. We're going to do a lesson and hopefully through the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, shed some more light on this Gentile issue. And you know what? You can never talk about this enough, right? You can never talk about the Gentile issue enough because there's a lot of ignorance concerning that word. And it's based upon the fact that people don't understand what the word Gentile means and how to correctly apply that word in scripture, So this is basically the meat of the matter dealing with this lesson. Let's go to the book of Ephesians, the 2nd chapter. We can start at we're going to read the 12th and 19th verse. Ephesians 2 and 12.
All right, this is the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 12. It says, let me bring that. All right, it says that at that time you were without Yahushai.
Right, now people, first of all, people read this and this chapter in particular, and they don't even understand what the hell is going on. First of all, that's Paul speaking to who? He's speaking to the Israelites that lived in Ephesus, Greece.
Yep.
That's who he's talking to. He wasn't talking to the whole world, all right, all nations. He was talking to the Israelites that lived in Ephesus, Greece, that were calling themselves Ephesians, all right? It was a letter written to them, all right? Go on.
It says that at that time you were without Yahushai.
So he's telling them now they were calling themselves Ephesians, these Israelites, right? So by them calling themselves Ephesians, they were without Yahushai. They didn't have the truth of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So Paul said you are without Yahushai. Because if you're calling yourself like an African American, then you're without Yahushai, which is what the world calls Jesus Christ. Now the only way you can be saved from the destruction that the Most High Yahweh is bringing is you have to know about his son Yahushai. Because it tells you in the book of Acts 4 and 12, there is no other name whereby salvation is given. So that's why it's important to know Yahushai and to know about Yahushai. So Paul was telling the Ephesians or the Israelites that lived in Ephesus, Greece, you were without Yahushai. Go on.
Right, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel.
Right, and they weren't calling themselves Israelites.
Right.
They were calling themselves Ephesians.
Right.
And guess what? They were worshiping the customs of the Greeks, which goes back to
Diana.
Right, which goes back to Alexander the Greek that basically conquered our people. All right, Alexander the Greek conquered our people, and then later you had Ptolemy, all right, that came on the scene. Then you had all the line of the Ptolemies. They basically conquered our people, the Israelites, and they forced our people into worshiping their customs.
That's right.
Like you had this guy Ptolemy. He brought out many edicts. One of the edicts is, now an edict is like a command, a speech. He said that we're not to circumcise our children anymore, circumcise our males anymore. That was one of the edicts that this guy Ptolemy gave.
Oh, like Antiochus Epiphanes, he also did the same thing.
Right.
During the time of after the Alexander's empire fell, he's the one of the main ones that came into our temple, burnt our temples, and forced Israel to stop keeping the laws. And anyone that was found keeping the laws were put to death. He burned the books of the law,
Yep.
And he called, there were certain Israelites that went along with it. you know. So those Israelites that went along with it, eventually what happened was they fell away from the graces of the Most High,
Yep.
and they in turn taught their sons and their, grandchildren, so on and so forth, that they were heathens, that they were Greeks.
Yeah, they fell away from their nation. And that's pursuant to Jeremiah 17:4, where the Lord said, you shall discontinue from your heritage. And you had these devils like Alexander the Creep and Ptolemy and Antiochus to thank for that. So when you come down to the time of Paul now, which was around what? 60 AD, 50 AD, somewhere around there.
Yep.
You had a group of Israelites living in Ephesus calling themselves Ephesians. So Paul was, by the grace of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, Paul was sent to them guys to help bring them back to their nationality, their true nationality, which were Israelites.
Bringing them back to the fold.
Bringing them back to the fold, which is happening right now. It's happening all over again. All right. That's why we're out there on the street. Basically, we're out there to bring back our people, those 12 groups you see, beginning with the so-called Negroes, the Mexicans, the so-called Puerto Ricans, the Haitians. Bring them back to what? Bring them back to their nationality. Bring them back to who they really are, which are Israelites. All right? Okay, go on.
It says that at that time you were without Yahushai, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel,
right,
and strangers from the covenants of promise.
Right, because the promise is going to who? To the
Israel.
Israelites. And the covenants are what? The agreements which the Lord made with our nation, which is what? To follow his laws, statutes, and commandments. That's the covenant, because another word for covenant means agreement. Go on.
It says, having no hope and without the Most High in the world.
Right. So if you call yourself any other nationality, but who you really are, I'm speaking to you so-called Negroes, West Indians, Puerto Ricans, etc. If you call yourself that, then you have no hope, because Yahushua ain't coming to save no Puerto Rican.
That's right.
Yahushua ain't coming to save no Mexican.
Yep.
Yahushua ain't coming to save no Negro, no African American. Yahushua is coming to save Israelites.
That's right.
So it begins with you knowing your nationality. And it was the same thing back there during the time of Paul. That's why we're reading the scripture.
Right. That's why the Lord, through the mouth of Amos, said that the Lord is going to build up the tabernacles of David that were fallen and close up the breaches thereof.
The tabernacles of David were who? Israelites.
Israelites.
They weren't African American.
That's right.
They weren't Negro. They weren't Mexican.
Yep.
They weren't Puerto Rican. They were Israelites.
Those names came later when the so-called white man conquered our people.
Just like during the time of the Greeks, the so-called white man during that time, the Alexander the Creep and Ptolemy and Seleucus and Antiochus, they conquered our people and what? Put different names on them. All right? But we have to come out of that. Go on.
19th verse, right?
Yeah, down to the 19th.
All right. Read down to the...
no, I'm sorry. 19th verse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, therefore, ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of the Most High.
Right. Now, therefore, ye are no more strangers and foreigners.
Right.
Now, what's another word for that word stranger and foreigner? Gentile.
Yep.
All right? Gentile. When you look it up. The word Gentile comes from the Latin word gentilis, which means foreigner or stranger.
Yep. And if I may say this, the other nations are actual heathens, strangers. They actually are strangers, a strange away from us.
Right.
So this right here is telling them, really what Paul was saying was that, look, now that you learned about the Lord, Yahushai, now you're no longer a stranger. You're no longer put away from this, because you were Israelites and now you're being brought back to the fold.
Right.
So that label that was on you of stranger was put away from you. Now you're back in the good graces of the Most High, so to speak.
Yeah, because the Most High considers all the other nations to be strangers to him and foreigners to him, which shows you once again that the Lord didn't, yes, he created all peoples, but he didn't create all people to serve him.
That's right.
He only created one people to serve him, which are the Israelites.
That's why the scriptures say, who can create a clean thing out of an unclean thing? Not one.
Exactly.
The thing that cleaned up Israel was the law, statutes, and commandments that the Most High gave them, and that was only given to Israel. It wasn't given to the other nations.
That's right, pursuant to Psalm 78 and 5. Now let's read 19th verse again.
Yep. It says, now therefore you are no more strangers and foreigners.
So who is Paul? Let's put this in proper perspective. Who is Paul speaking to? He's speaking to the Israelites that call themselves Ephesians, that were living in Ephesus, Greece.
That's right.
He said, now that I bring the truth to you, in particular the truth about Yahweh Shai, you are no more strangers and foreigners.
Yep.
All right? In other words, you're no more Gentiles, which, like I said, if you look up the word Gentile, it's from the Latin gentilis, which means foreigner or stranger. Go on.
It says, but fellow citizens with the saints.
Now, who are the saints? When you read Psalm 50 and 5, it tells you the saints are the Israelites. Psalms 148 and 13, it tells you the saints are Israelites.
That's right.
That's who the saints are. Go on.
And of the household of the Most High.
Who is the household of the Most High?
Israel.
Not everybody.
That's right.
Now let's go from there to the book of 1 Corinthians 12, 1 to 2. And we're going to go in the blue letter and look up this word that we're about to read.
All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant.
Yeah, because you got a lot of people that are ignorant, especially ignorant to the word Gentile. And another thing too, they don't understand the history of what was going on at the time those writings were being written. They don't understand the difference between the natural Gentile and the unnatural Gentile, which the natural Gentile was the other nations, the Hamites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Cushites, and the unnatural Gentile were the Israelite foreigners that were scattered among those nations, thinking that they were Ammonites or Moabites. Like I'm going to give an example. We found out about this guy Achior, right? Written about in the book of Judith. Now this guy Achior, he was an Israelite that was raised as an Ammonite. All right, that's what we found out. Yep. And you had that. Give me another example. Well, you had Titus.
Yep. Timothy. Uriah the Hittite. Uriah the Hittite.
Uriah the Hittite. He was called a Hittite. Why? Because he lived in those lands. All right.
Yep. The Ethiopian eunuch.
But those guys were what? They were Israelites raised up in another nation's philosophy.
Yep.
All right. So let's read 1 Corinthians. Now, Corinthians. Who were the Corinthians? They were Israelites that were scattered in Corinth, Greece.
Yep.
And Paul also went to them too, because they were part of that fold. They were part of that fold that the Most High was going to raise up to the truth. All right, there it is. That you're looking at it now. Corinth, which was located in Greece, and right next to Corinth was the capital city there, Athens. And that's another thing about these people, because it says they're ignorant in the first verse, right? They're ignorant of geological locations of the scriptures. There's a term called geopolitics of the scriptures. Right, geopolitics. They're ignorant of that. Anyway, let's read 1 Corinthians 12 and 1.
It says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles.
Right, again, you know that you were Gentiles, that you were foreigners, that you were strangers. Who's Paul speaking to? The Israelites living in Corinth, Greece. So you brothers out there, when you're explaining it, make sure you explain it that way. Yep. Ask those people that swear up and down that the Lord came for everybody, and they'll pull out scriptures like that. Ask them, well, who's speaking here? And some of them, they'll say, well, that was Paul. Well, who was Paul speaking to? He was speaking to the Israelites that were living in Corinth, Greece.
That's right.
That's who he was speaking to.
That's right. That's why.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's why it says, you know that you were Gentiles, meaning you were in that state of mind.
Right.
You had fallen away from the graces of the Most High, so you were Gentiles. Right. Them other nations, they're still Gentiles.
They're still Gentiles.
No matter what they do.
Exactly. Hey, there's a scripture, and this is how we know Achior had to be an Israelite, because if Achior was an Ammonite, there's no way he would have came into the congregation of the Lord.
That's right.
Because the law says this: an Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord even to their 10th generation.
That's right.
All right?
That's right. And that is written.
That is written. That's the law. So this guy Achior, he had to be an Israelite.
That's right.
That was raised up as an Ammonite.
Yeah,
right? That thought he was an Ammonite.
Himself.
Right. Exactly. Well, hopefully we'll get to that.
Okay.
So now let's look up the word. Read the second verse again.
You know that you were Gentiles, carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led.
Now let's go to the blue letter Bible and look up the word Gentile.
All right, Gentiles.
Yep.
All right, the word there is ethnos.